we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Meet Cute Monday. Alicia, would you like to introduce yourself and your book?
Hi, everyone. I am Alechia Dow. I do not have a physical copy of my book with me right now. I wrote The Sound of Stars, which came out last year in February. I am the author of The Kindred, which should not be confused with Kindred by Octavia Butler, which no one can ever touch. And that will come out in January. And then another book, Sweepstakes. Sorry. Which will come out in 2023, and I think 2 anthologies that'll happen in between those. Really fun stuff. Hi.
I'm so excited for Sweepstakes. Like the second you announced it, I was like, oh my god, shut up. That sounds so good.
I'm like super surprised they let me do this. I was like, they're not gonna let me do this, but they did, and that's on them. Really.
Honestly, no, I was like, you're an icon. Like, I appreciate you putting out this. Honestly, I was like, it's like the best kind of chaos, and I'm so excited for that.
The fun part about being able to write that is because I have bipolar disorder, and I wrote a character who has bipolar disorder, and I didn't have to worry so much about making sure that people who don't have this can continue on with it, like I did with every other story I had to write. So I get to be a little more me when I'm writing this, and it's really, really fun for me. So that's an absolute joy.
I love to hear that. It's so exciting. I love when authors are given a chance to just do something that's really them, or just really out there, and people are like, because I feel like there are readers for it. You know what I mean? The issue is just whether or not the market is ready for it. So
I think it was that, and then being able to write about food, because I'm a former pastry chef. So I got to do food, vampires, and pure chaos. So if you've ever seen me do any kind of panels, it's like absolute chaos usually. And that's the kind of character I wrote in that book. So be prepared. That's happening.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm like food, vampires, and chaos. Can it get better? I don't think so.
Lots of humor and Black families and just fun.
Love it. Okay, I'm gonna pitch my book really quick. I am Emery Lee, author of Meet Cute Diary, a YA rom-com about a trans boy who has to stage the perfect romance in order to save his romance blog from a troll. And that is out next month. Get your pre-order receipts in, please, because we're so close to me announcing the next goal. So let's do that. Okay, my usual spiel at the beginning. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we will get to them as we go. And we highly encourage questions, because that's what makes it fun when random comments pop up. If anything super interesting comes up, I'll also go ahead and include it. Sometimes people leave really fun comments and we just kind of riff off of them, so that will also be a thing. Okay, so for the first question, so obviously with The Sound of Stars, you're dealing with a sci-fi post-apocalyptic kind of setting. So what are some of the greatest joys and the biggest difficulties of writing a romance in that kind of setting and world?
That's a tough question, because one, writing romance is really fun. So I enjoyed that. Writing sci-fi is where it's I love sci-fi. Sci-fi is my favorite genre, but it's also the most difficult genre because you have to actually think a lot and be smart. And I'm not always that person, so I had to read books. I had to read books on physics and how things work, and it was really, really, really tough. And hopefully I did it well on it. I have my partner also had to read physics for me and be like, this is what you have to do here. This is how it works. So it's hard with the world building and then getting that together and making sure it's consistent throughout 104,000 words, which is The Sound of Stars, was tough. I'll admit it. It was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough for this. So that was complicated. But once I had a good editor, and we just kind of worked on it a lot, and it got there, and I'm really happy with it. I also really, really loved writing the song lyrics that I did throughout, and those were the funnest for me to write. The romance was nice because they were both really kind of shy and Yeah, like one wears his heart on his sleeve, and then the other one is like, no. No, thank you. So I had a lot of fun writing that and kind of the quiet moments in between the big ones. So it was really fun.
When you like set out, because I'm also a huge sci-fi fan, but I almost never write it because I'm not smart enough to write it. Like it's just it's like I started working on a sci-fi project like I don't know a year and a half ago, and like it's still 90% in the planning stages just because of like the complexity of like trying to put all of that together, and I feel like it's like really hard. But like, what were like some of the things that you did like as you were like prepping the world and everything? Like I know you said you did like a lot of reading. Like was there anything else you kind of like used to help you like come up with ideas and like put it all together?
Um, I guess. I mean, I love science fiction so much. So when I sat down to write this, I had an idea of a girl with a locker and books in her locker that she's kind of like sneaking to people on the, just like, oh, here you go. Um, and I thought, why would she be doing that? And instead of going, I don't know, normal and being like, maybe books were banned in the school or something, you don't know. I went with an alien invasion because, I mean, who doesn't, right? So that's where I went with it, and then it just kind of snowballed into that. The thing is, once you're writing sci-fi, you have to know that there are things that you can ask questions about and you have to provide answers for. But then there are things that you can ask questions about that you don't have to provide answers for. And it's really important to make that distinction at the beginning. And then you start to realize, oh, I don't need to be smart enough for this. What I need to do is make this consistent and just like make it to the point where people are like, oh, that's not a thing I was thinking about. So that's fine. It's like a trick. You have to trick your audience.
I feel like one of the things too is just kind of like when you're setting up the questions, like making sure that you ask enough questions and enough good questions, because if you don't ask the questions yourself and then answer them, everybody else is asking questions, and like if you're not careful, then it's going to be like, oh crap, they caught me.
Yeah, exactly that. It's just like you really have to think about these things and have somebody else read it and think about those things. And then if somebody who doesn't read sci-fi reads it, then they're going to ask questions that you really are like, I don't know why. Okay, I don't make the rules on that. Leave me alone. You just have to hope that your audience are people who are like ready to kind of go with it and not be a little more fiction than science. That's what I'm hoping.
Did you have any trouble when you were like, because obviously like when you're writing any type of book, like the characters and like the relationships, all that kind of stuff, like a huge pillar of the book. But then of course when you're writing like sci-fi, you're also writing like complex world building and like, like all like the intricacies of that. Like, did you have any trouble like balancing the two and making sure you were giving enough attention to each, or like how did you like make sure that like both things were as fully fleshed out as you needed them to be?
I'm not sure I did that successfully. I can't answer. I would say I think The Sound of Stars is one of those stories that is more characters, really based on characters and what they're doing and why they're doing it, and the relationship is like at the center of that story, and everything else is kind of revolving around it. I don't know. There were times where you know that you have to answer something there and you have to get something in there, and then you kind of go with it. And thankfully, I had an editor who was like, no, you have to actually get on this. And then I'm really grateful I had somebody who could do that. And I have great CPs too. So they're all like, okay, you need the world building here. And I kind of just start a story and I get right in going into it. And The Sound of Stars is one of those. And then I had to like go back and add some of the world building in the beginning because I was adding it at the end and it was too late. So I had to move everything up. Thankfully, the lesson I learned in that is so much better because when I wrote The Kindred, I knew from the beginning that I had to get the world building in. So it was a big lesson for me, and I feel much better about it. But I don't know. In 2 more sci-fi books, I might be really good at this. Fingers crossed.
I have the same problem where I'm like, oh yeah, like 75% of the book, I'm like, this world building element. I was like, why wasn't this here at the beginning? And I'm like, because I just made it up now at the end. Like,
yeah. It makes sense to me. I don't know why anybody else doesn't get it. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm writing for people.
Yeah,
That
have to
that's the
remember
trick.
right. Like somebody has to be able to read this and actually make something out. Okay, right, right. But like
Right.
shout out to CPs and editors for actually doing that because I
Let's
don't
keep
even
it
want to
on
know like yeah, I'm like without like that extra like nudge, like I feel like I had even just like with Me Cure Diary, like of course like the world building is nowhere near as complicated as like, you know, like in sci-fi, but like even just in that, like I had like people being like, so you never addressed this, like are you gonna like give us some detail and like there's like these elements of the blog and that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, about that. I
It's really something. And having CPs who write in your genre is really important too. On the Kindred, I got I had Rebecca Coffindaffer helped me because they write amazing and really fun, and somehow they get it all in there without it feeling like odious at any point. And I was so impressed with them that I asked, "Okay, can you help me?" Because I want to make sure I'm doing this right. There's like two threads that I just couldn't find a way through. And they were like, "You're doing fine. It's not you're doing fine. You're overthinking this. Just calm down." And it was really, really good for me to have that.
yeah, I feel like for me it's been I have a lot of uh I'll talk a lot of times with people who will just kind of like I'm like, how do I fix this? And they'll be like, here's a suggestion. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And then we just kind of like bounce back and forth as we kind of like just like riff off each other. And I
Mm.
feel like usually what happens is by the end, I come up with something that's like brilliant. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I came up with this. But like, yeah, I have a couple CPs who have been like so helpful just because
Yeah.
even if like they don't know the solution and I don't know the solution, just talking to them and like discussing like the things that we like, the things we don't like, whatever. Like, I feel like that really helps just like create that light bulb moment. And then suddenly it's like,
You need the brainstormers. You need the
yeah,
people who love coming up with ideas and are who just get you and get what you're trying to do. You need those people.
yeah.
And
And
I'm very grateful to have like 3 or 4 of them who are just like, "Okay, this is
yeah,
what you
like
need to do."
I feel like there's so much emphasis on like getting beta readers, and beta readers are like amazing and like super helpful and important. But like, yeah, having somebody that you can just brainstorm with, like even before you have like anything on the page that you can actually show to someone and be
Right.
like, read this, like that's so helpful. Like, it's just, I cannot overstate how much that has changed my writing process and just made it so much easier to get through things that I otherwise would have spent like months just like sitting
Right.
on it and not doing anything with. So
Same, exactly, yep.
yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so you are an ex pastry chef, and like every time you post like you post pictures of like the stuff you're making, I'm just like, how do I get to Germany? Like, how do I get over
I'm
there?
always baking. I'm always baking. It's
It
my
looks
thing.
so good, and I'm so jealous. But okay, so how does food play into your stories? And can you think of any examples of food as a catalyst for romance that you've loved in fiction or ones that you are looking forward to?
Okay, there was one book called The Last Bite by Nancy Verde Barr, I wanna say, and it's pretty old. Um, but she was the assistant to, Julia Child, and she wrote this romantic food book, and I wasn't in it for the romance, I was in it for the food right from the beginning, and it did not disappoint, and I really, really, really love good food stories, so I loved it, and I read that when I was a teenager, and I just kind of went back to it over and over and over again, and I think that's where it kind of came from that I could do both, and I haven't really gotten there yet with, like, foodie romance, because I don't think I can write contemporary. I don't know how you do it, it's amazing, um, and I have to have magic or something going on, like, something has to happen that's completely doesn't make any sense. I don't know, if it's contemporary, then I just feel like, "Oh, no, you're gonna mess this up." So if in the next few stories, I think you've got sweepstakes and something else I can't talk about. Um, there's a lot of food. That's all I can say. There is food, and I get to write about food. And I used to be a food writer and a food critic, and I love writing about food. When I was a food critic, my editor said I couldn't publish half the things I wrote because there's too many food puns, and also there's like way too much sarcasm on the page. People will not know what you're saying at this point. Okay, that makes sense. I'm like, but this could come in handy later, and it did. So
Yeah, I was like, for fiction, that's perfect. Like food puns and sarcasm, people, oh my god, people will eat that up. Like,
I hope so.
but I love what you said. I love what you said about when you were like that you haven't written a foodie romance because you can't do contemporary. And I just think that was just really like, it was funny to me because I personally never thought I would write contemporary until I started writing one for Nano, which ironically I started writing, that was back in like 2017. I started writing it thinking like, oh, well, you know, people love contemporary books. Like this will be easy to sell. The book did not sell. Nobody wanted it. And like, ironically enough, like it didn't go anywhere. And I mean, that was also me. Like, I don't know why I thought that book was like marketable. It was super niche. It was about like an art school and it was just like all this like drama in like an art school. It was very like, but I feel like that was something that like I never thought I would do was write contemporary. And then I feel like, and I think for the same reasons you said too, where it's like, you know, the chaos of having like those like sci-fi and fantasy elements, I feel like really do like, I feel like they work as a cool like catalyst for the story and they help like, because I love writing romance, but I feel like having those things really do help bring like the characters and the romance and like the emotions and stuff together because you have so much like other stuff going on. But I think for me, what helped or what ultimately helped, I think, was when the difference between just like a contemporary, like a literary type contemporary, and like a rom-com, because generally what I write now in the contemporary sphere are rom-coms. And it's just the fact that like I feel like in rom-coms you are allowed to take that level of like chaotic absurdity and like actually do something with it. Like it's not like there were a couple parts in Meet Cute Diary that like my editor was like, you know, this feels a little bit like unrealistic. Like, should we make it more realistic? And I was like, you know, honestly, like, it's a rom-com. Like,
But there is some kind of fantasy to rom-com. There is like this kind of element of fantasy in rom-coms that I really enjoy. I love reading rom-coms. That's like my number one rom-coms and like, I don't know, historical romance from time to time. And everything else. I read a lot. But the thing that keeps me going when I'm reading rom-coms is that it doesn't feel so contemporary so much so as it has like this fantasy and there's an escapism to that. And I feel like when you're writing, for me personally, I like to write escapism and I love to read it as well. And I have a hard time kind of reading books that are too realistic and too about the topics that we already face right now. So I will just kind of push those away because if anything that makes me feel like sad or mad, I'm like, I can't handle it. So I think that rom-coms have that kind of level of fantasy to them. And I think that is what people really appreciate about them. And there is that level of chaos. There is that level of like, will they, won't they? And the kind of funny things that happen, right?
yeah.
That maybe wouldn't happen in real life.
Like,
right?
I think like, you know, I mean, I do like reading like realistic, like contemporary fiction on occasion. I feel like it's like one of my like I'll read one of those and then like read like 3 or 4 escapist books just to like balance it out because I do enjoy them and I think they're great. It's just, but sometimes it's a lot. And when you're dealing with all of that, like currently in the present day, and then you're like, okay, let me pick up a book and you jump into that too. It's like, it's a lot. But I feel like what I like about rom-coms too is like I can include little snippets of things that like I'm currently processing. Like if I'm dealing with like, you know, I don't know, some like drama with like social media, I can include an element of that into the book, but it's not like a super realistic portrayal of like that element. It's going to be like, and I mean, like with Meet Cute Diary, I feel like especially like, you know, the whole concept of like this kid moving across the country, stumbling into a fan and creating a whole like relationship with him. Like we all know that like realistically, that's not going to happen. Like, what are the odds of that happening to you in real life? Like next to none. But like it's a rom-com, so it's all about like, you know,
it's a rom-com. It goes in a rom-com. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the magic of romance and like the magic of like just like anything that can be chaotically humorous is now fair game. And so I feel like that like I feel like for me too, like I'm a slow reader and I have a very short attention span. So for me, it's hard to like read books that are not chaotic. Like if a lot of stuff is happening and there's like flashing lights and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's pretty. What's going to happen next? But if it's very like realistic and grounded, sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I can put this down for like 6 years and come back to it and it'll be fine. Like,
And
so
that's
like,
the unfortunate thing. Yeah. I mean, I can read the contemporary stuff that's very intense. I can do it, but then I have to read like 12 others right after that are not, because I have to like balance it somehow in my brain. I don't know why that is, but there are some amazing books, amazing contemporaries that are just that pack a heavy punch and they know what they're doing. I just can't write them, and I have a hard time reading them from time to time because I think I really enjoy my media with a like a level of escapism. I think that's just who I am, and that's probably hopefully what you get when you read my books. I hope.
I feel like, this kind of like reminds me too of like something that like Nick Stone had talked about a while back. But I do feel like to a certain extent too, like, you know, as Black people, like we see the struggle everywhere. Like we see it all the time.
Yeah.
And like when we look at media with Black people in it, most of it is the struggle. And
Yeah.
like, the media that does well, that wins awards, that you see like on like every list, like a lot of it is like struggle media. And so I think like, even like sometimes I feel like there's almost like this pressure to write like this realistic struggle of like all this kind of stuff. But then you reach a point, like, especially like for me, like as a writer, like, writing is my full-time job, and then other than that, it's like largely like watching TV and like reading books and stuff like that. And so like if all the media that I am consuming is struggle, then everything I'm doing is struggle. You know what I mean? It's literally like in my everyday life, it's in my work, and so it reaches a point where I think like for some of us, it's like, yeah, we just need a break. Like we just, and especially
we have to find joy. There has to be a point where we are not just finding joy, we're allowing joy, we're giving joy. And it's hard because we know how contemporary, as a librarian I can say how contemporaries fare, and certain categories do really well. That said, the escapism helps, and the kind of joy, and I swear there are not enough joy with marginalized communities. So I feel like that's something that needs to be more normalized so that we can have a balance within the media of how there's representation, and and I think there's a real thing to that. And I think I personally, I am like a Black person living in Germany, which is predominantly white. I live in a small village, which is completely white. So when I write stuff, I want to have everybody in there. I want it to be full of color and joy and all of these things, because I already have, when I walk out the door, I'm speaking in German and everybody is staring at me. So I just want to be normal and write happy stuff. That's what brings me joy, and that's how I find my voice when I'm writing.
Yeah, and I think, and I think as like Black people, but as people of color, as marginalized people in general, like I feel like sometimes, when once we dip our toes into like the like real world stuff, I feel like it kind of becomes an expectation. Like, oh, that's what you're gonna do. Like you're gonna be like all realistic stuff. And it's like, even if I can get through like, the stress that it takes to write a really good, like quality, heavy hitting, like realistic book, like that's all I got. Like I'm not doing this for a career. You know what I mean? Like I need some downtime. Like I need my corny rom-coms. Like I need my escapist, like fantasy, like my sci-fi. Like I want like, alien boyfriends and stuff. Like I just, I want fun.
Yeah.
And I also think that sometimes people underestimate how much like how much you can explore something that's like of like value in a story that is also still an escapist like story.
Yeah.
Like it's not like because the story is escapist that means that like, there's nothing to learn from this story, there's nothing important in this story. It doesn't mean, like in like for instance, like in my rom-com, like it's a rom-com. The point of the story is not to teach you about, transphobia and stuff, but there's a lot I feel like you can still learn, you can learn about like, discovering your identity. You can learn about healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn about like, interactions with social media. So it's not like the idea that like, a teenager who picks up this book is going to take away nothing of like, educational value in the long run. Like, I feel like that's so like narrow-minded to think that that's all we have to offer.
I think when you're writing a book, and because you are who you are and how you exist is always going to end up somehow on that page. no matter how hard you try, you end up engaging in kind of social issues in a way that you get to set on your own terms and you get to talk about on your own terms. And it's really fun to write an alien invasion in The Sound of Stars. It was super fun because that means like you would think that all humans would be on one level, right? But then as the black girl, Ellie, she's like, nope,
Nope.
that's not how it works. That's still not how it works. There's going to be this old hatred carrying on into a new age. And how do you kind of change that and work with that and hope that you have a vision that's going to be better for everyone? And her main struggle throughout that book is, why should I? Should I be the one to do that? Do I think humans are worth saving? And she kind of has that mentality early on. And it's the arc of her story is to find out if she is going to do that, if she is going to be like, oh, I can change the world. But should she have to? And the thoughts of, this is sci-fi, but it still has to talk about, it doesn't have to, but it does talk about social issues in a way that she gets to express herself and think her thoughts the way she wants to without anyone else telling her she's wrong or without a white gaze on her own thoughts. And I really, really wanted to do that. And I hope I did that well. I think there were people who were like, it's a bit preachy and it's a bit this, but I think if you're ever writing a black character who thinks like, I'm not a superhero and I don't want to be one, I think you're going to have a lot of people who are just going to vehemently disagree. Yeah. I mean, I got some real hate mail. I got super bad hate mail for this. And some of it made me laugh. Like, does this author know that there are white women who are conservatives that want to read sci-fi? I'm like, yeah, sure, I know, but you were not the target audience, so I'm not really thinking about you when I wrote this. I don't know. Like, if I'm writing for teens, I'm thinking about how teens are going to respond to this, and I'm thinking about how teens respond to politics today and how teens would respond to all of these things. It's not that teens don't think about these things. They do. I mean, they protest against all kinds of things. They're very active.
Yep.
So it's a lot to take in, and you hope that you're doing it well, and you hope that you're doing teens justice, and you hope that you can address certain issues in a way that is not the focus of the story, but it's there, because then you kind of lose that sense of reality. And there's nothing wrong with losing that sense of reality. But when you completely forget it, you get into kind of like, I don't know. I feel uncomfortable if I didn't have a moment where she's like, I'm the only black person in the room. Because when I'm the only black person in the room, that's the first thought in my head. It's like, ooh, okay, I have to be a certain way here. So
yeah, like that is, like no kid, like literally walking into a room and looking around and being like, nobody here looks like me. Like that immediately, like, yeah. And like, yeah, I think it's a really good point to like what you're pointing out is like, we don't write sci-fi fantasy the way that like white people do. Like it's not, and
we just can't.
We can't, yeah, and even no matter how simple the story is, like no matter how like unrelated to race the actual story is, there are just things that we take into consideration because we lived it for the past however long we've been alive, and it's just like just even simple things like walking into a grocery store, like if that's different for us than it is for someone who doesn't have to think about those things. And so that really
it's a totally different experience, and it's a different mindset, and it's one that's really shaped by everything that has happened to you. And even when you're writing a character in a fantasy, in a sci-fi, you still kind of, these things are filtered through. And it's not a big point, but it's going to be there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think I do love when there are stories that can completely not have to focus on any of those things. I haven't seen one written by a marginalized author where they didn't have to like have that little thing in there, because we know that about ourselves. We know that about our characters we're writing. We know that these things are our thoughts, and to do so would be disingenuous. It wouldn't feel quite right.
Yeah, like I think even like with Meet Cute Diary, I have a scene where Noah walks into a party and he was like, I think I'm the only person of color here. Like, what is going on? And like, he doesn't experience any overt racism in that scene. Nobody, says anything like, oh my god, like why is there a black person? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not like it was not like the point of the scene is not to draw attention to like the racism. But it is, I feel like, you know, like if I'm hanging out with a friend and they are like, hey, you come hang out with all my friends. And I'm like, sure. And like everyone in the room was white. I'm immediately like,
like it changes things. It changes things when you're and you have it's not saying you're uncomfortable, but you are very aware that there is a perception about you in that room.
yep.
And I don't know how to not write that. Maybe one day I might be able to, but I don't know how to right now. Sweepstakes is the first time I wrote a character who is white. And this has been very fascinating for me because it's like, ooh, what am I thinking about? I don't know. But I live in Germany and the character is white and German, and I can do my best there. But like that was the first time. And I've written I don't know how many books at this point. It's like so many books, and I've never written a white POV before. So it was really fascinating to kind of look at that and go, so what are they going to be thinking about? And it changes things in it's very weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You're like, what do they even think about? Like, what even goes on in your head? Like,
I mean, the good thing is there's vampires, so that's a good amount of the book.
There you go. You got something to focus on.
But for like the other character, it's like, oh no, we're in a foreign country, and what if they hate us too? I don't know. I don't know if it's like America. I don't know these things, and it seems like we're going to be fine. We're going to be safe, but are we? I don't know. So I get to kind of use myself there and then use my partner at the same time. Be like, so what do you think about if you were in a hotel with vampires? Go. It's really fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fun exploration of like I feel like if that was like I feel like if you were doing something similar like in the contemporary novel, it'd be like, so now what? But like with vampires, it changes everything.
We're just gonna make vampires. Like anytime you're getting comfortable and you have thoughts, I'm just gonna put a vampire in there. So
I was saying that the other day where I was like, can I just like go back and like make it so that any book I write is just like demons? Like so everyone's like chilling and also just demons.
Yeah.
Why? Because
I mean, what a surprise.
you know, like
a lot of reaction to that.
Okay, let us go on to the next question. Okay, so in The Sound of Stars, you have this whole concept of like music and books being used as like a catalyst to bring people together because of the whole thing with like, you know, the aliens and like the legality of like contraband, I guess. So what inspired this for you, and how do you think of the arts and creative interests in terms of like how those things can come into play when you're kind of like crafting characters and like relationships?
For me, I can't. I need music. I need these things, and I need stories. I need them. But the reason why they're so important in this story is because that's like the great bridge. That's the great connector between people who have zero interests that will overlap, except for maybe music, except for maybe stories and food. It's important. So when you have like people who are completely opposite, you have to find that one thing that's going to draw them together, and maybe that's art. And I feel like when you're in the middle of a white country, at least we can still talk about music. At least we can find these things that are, you know, that are going to overlap in cultures. So that was really important to me. And because of that, because if you're dealing with aliens who really don't want to have any feelings or any emotions, you think about what art gives you and its feelings and its emotions and its thoughts. And what if they were like, oh, that's the exact opposite of what we want. Let's make that illegal. That would make sense. Because if you have people who are feeling things and are emotional, you're not going to be able to predict on how they're going to react to something. And I really like that about the story, but also humanity in itself, is that you can't predict how people are going to respond to art and how it's going to make them feel. And because of that, it would make it really hard for an alien race to be like, I can use them to do whatever I want. Well, now I can't because they're doing their art stuff and I don't know what that is about, and that can't help me. So no. I really, really thought that was important. And I loved, again, writing the music lyrics and having a band in there and just kind of having that kind of element of joy. And the thing that brings them together throughout the whole story is even when he's an alien and she's a human, they can still talk about something and find something that they love.
I think that's like so like I feel like it's so true. Like just even like day-to-day real life, like the way that you can connect with somebody just because you're in the same fandom or because you like the same band, and like you can have like there are so many people that I was friends with for years because we liked the same thing, and then I was like, in reality we have nothing in common. I'm not even sure I actually like you, but like I feel like we just get along because we're constantly like sharing this like one like story or this one like band or something that we love. So I feel like that's like it really is like a good connector.
It connects you and it makes you feel like you're part of something else. And it's not just one person thinking one thing. It's a whole group of people who may find Beyonce's Black Parade awesome, or like it's just you find this and it connects you to other people, and you need connection when everything else is like breaking you apart. So that's what the story is really about, is how to find a way through all of this to someone else.
Yeah, it's also I feel like a good example of because you're talking about earlier about like escapism,
Yeah.
and just thinking because like we just lived through a global pandemic. I mean, it's still an ongoing global pandemic, but there's at least like light now. Like we're like okay, there will be okay in the future, but like just yeah, but like I feel like just thinking about like that, like the last year and months, like we've largely been locked in our apartments and like cowering in our homes, like all we have are like books and TV and like music, and like I feel like when things are at its absolute worst, like sometimes just having that escapism is what gives you that like we got to keep going, like we can do we
It's
can like
hope.
fix
Yeah.
this, like and so I feel like that's also like a really I feel like a in relation like to your story, like you're talking about like the alien race showing up and like completely rewriting the way that like this the world is like structured and everything. Like I feel like having that like that hope that like something that just kind of like takes you away, like I feel like that's like I feel like I feel like it always becomes super important to people, like in like the darkest times when things are really hard.
I loved it. I loved writing it. I think you can see a lot of my favorite sci-fi inspirations whenever I write something, because it's just, if it's not Blade Runner, if it's not this or that, there's always kind of a reference to one of these things, because that was what I went to when I was a kid. We were like super poor. We didn't have a lot of things. I didn't have heat. I didn't have new clothes. I didn't have food quite often. But the library had all of the X-Men comics. And so I found those and I read them. And I read Philip K. Dick. I've read all the Dune series. I read anything I could get my hands on because that was the one way I could escape my home life. And I was in the library doing that. And because of it, that's why I get to write stories now. I feel like that's why I get to write stories now, where I get to give that to, teens who might need it as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's a thing for a lot of authors, and I don't know if that's part of what makes us become authors is the fact that we are so like, we have this memory of like escaping into fiction, and so we feel like it's so important and like so
Yeah.
pivotal. But yeah, I feel like that is like a common thing where we're like, my whole life was like up until like the age of 18, my whole life was what fiction can I escape into? Like what fandom can I lose myself into? And it's even why I wrote Meet Cute Diary the way I did. It was like, I would pick up a book and I would like love it, and I would be like, where can I find fandom and like community in like the love of that thing? And so I would be on Tumblr. And so I feel like, yeah, that's a huge thing for us. It's just like, escaping into something, and that being the thing that kind of keeps us going, because sometimes you just don't want to, or you just can't deal with what's happening in real life, and like you just need somewhere else that you can kind of like go to cope.
Yeah.
So I love that, and I love the whole setup for it with the Sound of Stars. I love how you made like it's tragic, but it's also romantic at the same time, and I think that's beautiful.
It's like, bad things are happening, but at the same time, there can be something good and there can be something hopeful. And I think one of the biggest critiques I get of The Sound of Stars so far is the ending. And I will not give it away while I'm talking, but I will say that I had this ending planned from the very beginning I wrote this book, and it never changed through every revision note, everything. It never changed once. So I felt like you should read this book and you should feel hopeful of this book. But if I made everything completely tied up and perfect, it would not be the right story. It would not fit it. So I hope that anybody who is watching and has read it, please know I had a plan. I have a plan still. Okay.
I love that. I love that. But for anybody listening, Miku Diary does have a happy ending, I promise. I had somebody, I was tweeting some like nonsense the other day, and somebody was like, oh my God, is this about Miku Diary? Is it like trying? I was like, no, I swear, Miku Diary is happy. It's just, if you pick up anything else from me in the future, just know that I agree with Alicia. Sometimes a book, you just can't tie up all the endings. Like there
But
has
it's happy. It's a happy ending. It's just
you
not
know,
a perfectly tied up box. It has to be a certain way for it to make sense.
and I feel like that's huge because I feel like something that happens a lot is like my roommate is always my first beta reader, and she's very like, can we have everything perfectly like rainbows and unicorns happy? And I'm like, listen, no. So like
It's not possible. You want it to be, but if there's going to be an entire war for Earth and humanity, would you think that it's going to wrap up in 20 pages? No. I
like
can't do that.
it's just
But there's a reason, and I promise you have to believe in me. We got a reason for this. It's hard to do it's hard to do endings in sci-fi. It's really hard to do a good one. And I think when you look at the media of how they've wrapped up things, it's been very miss as opposed to hit. So I think I gave a great ending to that story, but is it the ending? I don't know.
stay tuned to find out. Like okay. So okay, so let's talk about a little bit about the stakes. And how in a sci-fi fantasy romance where your stakes are now things like life or death and like the fate of the world and all that kind of stuff. How did you go about using those to like impact the relationship and like the romance? And can you give a shout out to some sci-fi fantasy romances that you love?
Oh my goodness. Well, I already mentioned Rebecca Coffindaffer's Throne. Oh my god, I just forgot that. Like, it's in my Throne. No, Crown Chasers. The second book is called Throne Breaker, or I think so. That one's amazing. I'm really good friends with Sheena Bockweg, who wrote Glitch Kingdom, and I thought that was really, really fun. Andrea Tang's Rebel Wing, amazing. Laura Beth Johnson's Goddess in the Machine is one of those books you read and you think, how did she do that? Because I don't there's so much incredibleness in that entire story, but it's so thoughtful. And I'm really, really impressed. I'm so impressed by her, and I'm in awe of her, like just completely in awe. Let's see. I think Meg Long's Cold. Nope, can't remember the title. It's like Cold Night, Fast Wolves. Oh, Cold as the Night, Fast as the I don't. It's something like this. I'm really looking forward to reading it. And let's see. I'm looking at my shelves right now. I think anything by Bethany C. Morrow is amazing, because Bethany C. Morrow is amazing and so smart. Like, if Bethany C. Morrow decided to write sci-fi, I would just pack up. And I mean, she wrote Mem, and Mem was amazing. It's also sci-fi. It's a sci-fi historical spec fic, I guess. It's very literary, and I can't write literary, so I read that and I was just, this is incredible. What is this? And I'm lucky that she has deigned to talk to me a few times, and I'm always like, "Hi, Bethany. I'm totally normal." She's really, really cool and so talented. Naomi Hughes, her After Image. I'm looking at my shelf over here. What else I really, really love? Whenever I really, really love something, I have to buy the book right away and like put it right on my shelf. Okay, I really loved Enchanté by Gita Drelise. That was gorgeous, and I haven't read the second in the series yet, but it's on my shelf, and I really, really want to. I loved Opposite of Always as well. I don't know him that well, but I really love the spec fic, but it never feels like it's. I don't know how he did that either, where it's just like you did it so well and it's so playful and fun, but it has its serious moments. You're amazing. I have so many more, and I feel like I'm gonna forget stuff. Ray Bear, holy crap. The Gilded Ones, and right now, not to throw this completely off topic, but I really, really want to read Farida Abike Ayamindi's, and I'm definitely botched that. Ace of Spades, because I know it's amazing. I just know it without needing to pick it up that I know it's amazing. And Adiba Jagadirs. Everything she writes is incredible. So I imagine that she has like I don't know how many book deals right now, but
Yeah.
she's gonna have like way more because she's just so good.
Like if we just announced like 3 new books.
Yeah, she has like 3 whole book deals right now. Like,
Yeah.
like, how does she do it? We don't know, but she's good. That's what matters. She's really, really good, and she writes things that are just so beautiful. And a lot of these authors are the authors you read are like they write stories in a way that is so easy for you to read them. And I know that's a weird thing to say.
No, I completely agree.
But when you're able to read something and you understand and you don't have any struggles at all following it, you know that author put in a lot of time to make sure every sentence flowed perfectly into the next and that every sentiment was matched and follows through, and it's all very moving in beautiful ways. And I think there's just so many people doing that. And JL Wings of Ebony, and I want to read Ayanna Gray's Beasts of Prey because I know that's also going to be super amazing. So I have a lot of favorites. And I already missed this first half of your question, so please ask me again.
Yeah, so the first half of the question was basically how do you use like the raised stakes and like the higher pressure of like a sci-fi fantasy type story to kind of like influence your romance and kind of like build up like that like romantic tension?
I think there's a place for it because you know that there's some big stuff happening. There's big stuff happening. And at the same time, your characters know that these things are happening, but there's also a lot they can't do about it. And because there's a lot they can't do about it, there's this hopelessness. And because there's this hopelessness, they are going to reach for hope wherever they can. And when they're reaching for hope, maybe they're reaching for each other. And that helps with
I was like waiting for you. I was like, okay, wait. I was like, she's setting this up. I can't wait till she's gonna hit it and it's just gonna like.
It was very like Yoda-esque. I was getting there. I was like, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I was like, you hit us, yes.
But that's what I hope that you're able to read that and think, okay, a lot is going on. There's no time for romance, but there's also a lot they can't do. So what else are they going to do besides talk to each other? And maybe they're going to realize that, hey, I could really like this person. And this person makes me happy for some unknown reason. And I just want to be in that space right now because there are things that I cannot control. And that I think is a crux of a lot of great romance in science fiction and fantasy, because you know that there are limitations to what they can and can't do. And they're trying so hard. But if you thought about it the entire time, about things you cannot control, that's just a maddening prospect. So you have to kind of get there. You have to allow them the space to breathe and fall in love.
That just made me think. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but like you saying that just immediately made me think. They both die at the end by Adam Silvera. Like this that book, like the way, like I feel like it's like because the book is like sci-fi, but like the sci-fi is really low. But like it just I feel like the culmination of like what that book is just like that element of like we can't control this. Our lives, like we're gonna die, like you know what I mean, like the world is ending, but like that kind of like element of like we're gonna die. Like, what can we do in this moment? Where can we find our happiness and our release and our escape in this moment? And like, it's finding each other. I just feel like that is like, what you said, like about that being like, you know, I feel like that is like the ultimately like the culmination of like romance in a lot of like sci-fi fantasy. Um, and I feel like that story, I feel like that's why that story is so popular, is because if you love sci-fi fantasy, you love that element, like it's a huge thing for you as far as like romance goes, then like of course you're gonna, you know, pick up a book like that like is essentially, that's the entire plot of the book, is just that one romantic thread.
Yeah. But you can't escape some things there, and you can't control some things. So what you can control is how you feel in the moments up until the bad things happen.
Yeah.
And I hope that the characters get to do that. And I like writing characters in that moment because they're at their most determined. And that's really fun.
I feel like that's also why like hurt comfort scenes and like fan fiction and stuff, just like they're so good, because you have like this moment where your characters are at their lowest and like they're just like grasping for like, you know, that like that comfort, that like something to like keep them grounded and like, you know, in the face of knowing that like we can't fix this, we can't necessarily change everything, but like, you know, like what do we do when we're at rock bottom? And it's like, you have each other.
Exactly. It won't save the world, but it could save your world for you know, a few days. So go for it.
It's like it may not keep you alive, but it gives you something worth living for.
Exactly.
Yes, I love that. I love that crap. I'm like that. I eat that. I eat that up. Like that's so good. Okay, this one's kind of fun. Which do you think is more romantic and why? Sharing your creative interests with someone, like basically like you both already like the same things, or introducing someone to your creative interests and like basically making them like fall in love with them.
Oh, they're both amazing. No, they both are. They both are, because there's a real joy in sharing something with somebody else who hasn't experienced it, and you're like, "See, don't you love it?" And there's something about that. I think it comes down to two things. When you're sharing with somebody who already has a lot of loves, and you're kind of going back and forth, and you're just like in this place where you can talk about the things you like, and maybe they're not the same things. I think there's a real connectivity with that. But when you're sharing with somebody else who hasn't experienced that before, it's like reaffirming who you are in that moment and why you love something, and kind of explaining it to someone else. So that in itself is very romantic. And so it's both, in both places, you're just kind of really showing who you are and kind of being vulnerable and sharing the things that you love.
I'm like, I absolutely love like getting into something and just like forcing somebody to like join. Like, I'll like watch a show and be like, okay, you sit down, we're watching this show. And like they're watching the show, I'm like watching them for reactions. Like, are you loving it?
It's like really amazing because you love it. It makes you love something even more usually. Like you're like, I feel very adamant about this, and I'm going to make you feel that way too. So buckle in. But you only do that to people you already care about. It's usually you don't want to share those things with people you don't care about, because what if they hate it, then that's going to be like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love when you're like, when someone is like basically like not only are you saying I care about you because I want to show you this thing, but then the other person is essentially reciprocating by saying I care enough about you that I'm willing to sit through this thing. Yeah. Like even on the off chance that I might hate this, I'm gonna sit through it for you, and you're just like.
There's a lot of care there. There's a lot of love, and it's very personal.
I'm like that's huge, man. That's like a foundational to like a really like strong relationship. Okay, so my last question for you is about sweepstakes. So it is a Dracula retelling with like food and like all that fun jazz. So if you could get permission to write one romance featuring any paranormal or sci-fi species, what would it be and why?
Oh man, why? Okay. I mean, being able to do a Dracula retelling in this really random way has been very, very positive for me, because it's like that when you're writing a story like this, you're finding so much joy about something that you have always loved, and now you get to twist a little bit. What would I pick for like a paranormal type creature species? I don't know. Besides Dracula, this is like I love Dracula so much. I love all the iterations of Dracula too. It's just like all of them. Um, hmm. I don't know. I love wolves. I love like, werewolves and all that stuff too. I like that all. I don't think I'm a person who writes fairies, so that's just not gonna happen. I don't think you're gonna see sorry everyone, if that's something you were hoping for, you're not probably gonna see that from me. I think it's been done by a lot of great people already, and I don't think I can add anything to that. Um, what else is there? No, I can't. I was gonna talk about something else, but no, I'm writing something else right now that's already like teetering. So, um,
I mean, my thing is
mermaids, mermaids maybe.
mermaids. I love mermaids.
But I don't know. I don't like water. I love swimming, but I don't like
Yeah.
water.
I don't know. Like I like so like my thing is demons. I do demons. I just think that they're really fabulous and cool. But like I don't know. I feel like there's like tons of like do you know any like I don't know like German myths or something?
Okay, there is one thing that I've been wanting to write, but I don't feel like I'm there yet. So I keep like it's on my in my mental back burner, and it's the Pied Piper. Because I really like that story, but the German version of it is even more creepy. And there's an entire town that really believes in this. So I would love to write that because I think you could make that extremely horrible. You can go full horror on that, and it would be really, really cool. And if you listen to if you know the German version of that story, you'll already know what I'm talking about because that is a creepy, creepy story. Um, there are a lot of German stories, like, but and almost all of them are terrible. So, like, people know stuff about German tales, and they're like, "Oh, German tales, like Grimm and all this." You think, "Oh, that's not so bad." But then if you actually read anything by Grimm, you're like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty rough." And also, at the same time, if you read anything that's not Grimm, that's just German tales. No. Maybe I do trumpets. I don't know. Maybe I do that.
Oh, that would be fun.
I don't know if I can do horror yet. That might be something in a few years where I'd be like, I'm ready to go scary. I'm not there yet.
I feel like my thing with like horror is it's always like horror elements. So it's like it's really like more like contemporary fantasy or something, but like horror elements. Because
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know. Like I did a Southern Gothic, but again, Southern Gothic is not like scary. It's more
No,
like
it's not that whole vibe.
like I feel like I love horror vibes. I don't know if I can do straight up scary. I don't think I have that.
I think I would scare myself so much that I would stop writing it.
Yep.
That's my problem. Because I have like a really active imagination. And when like almost every other night I have nightmares. Almost every other night. And if I wrote some of these things down, it would scare people really, really so bad. And it would be really hard for me to write. So maybe I'm just going to stay away from that genre for a long time.
I wrote down a nightmare that I had like a few months. Oh God, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's been like a year now. But it was like the scariest fucking dream I've like ever had. I wrote it down. I was like, I'm gonna turn this into a book one day. And the other day, I like opened the note on my phone and like started rereading it, and I scared myself and I had to close it. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna write that as a book one day. But
there are people who have to imagine this stuff, who have to write these tales. So it's like, of course, I'm gonna be terrified if I'm writing something scary. And it makes sense that all of us are like that. Some people can do it. I mean, Stephen King does it, and Tori Bovalino wrote a horror, and I think she's working within that genre, and good for her. She's amazing. Nope.
Yeah, right. Proud of you, but that's yeah.
Cannot do it. I don't want to be scared. I'll go to bed for like weeks thinking about it. Be like, no.
Yeah, I'm like, look, I don't mind being scared, but I'm gonna like traumatize myself. Like, I'm not gonna be able to do like anything. All I'm gonna be thinking about is like this thing that I like completely scared the shit out of myself.
Whenever I watch like something scary too, I like talk the whole time. I don't know why that is, but I have to like talk myself through it. And then there's like this other thing where if I'm at a scary scene and like something bad's happening, I think, okay, what would Wolverine do or Jean Grey do in this situation? That's how I talk myself out of getting scared. Can you imagine? And like, it's so bad that my partner is like, I can't watch this right now. You're making me laugh too hard. Why are you ruining this for me?
That's like I studied film, so like now like when I watch like scary stuff, I'll be like, oh, you see the lighting on that scene? They obviously used like, and I'll just like talk about like the technical stuff behind like the film.
Anything. I think the other day we were watching a scary movie, and I was like, oh no, that little girl is walking over there. She's not gonna be all right. She's not gonna be all right. And then she gets an ice cream from the ice cream guy, and I was like, she's got her ice cream now. She's gonna be fine. They're not gonna do anything with her having an ice cream cone. That's just not gonna happen. And then like a second later, something happens, and I was like, I didn't see that coming. And it's 100% a horror movie, so of course it's something's gonna happen. But I was like, with her ice cream? Who are these monsters?
Like evil, just not with the ice cream.
My brain does not work in a sensible way where it's like, I know movies, and if she has an ice cream cone, she's gonna be safe now.
I feel like they like actively were like, let's give her this ice cream cone just so when Alechia watches this, like, gonna...
I was like, what? And my partner's just like you knew you were getting into. I have to walk away. I have to walk away now because that just ruined my whole night. Wasn't expecting it.
Okay, well, I think we are at time. But would you like to give one last pitch of your book and let everybody know where they can find you online?
Okay. The Sound of Stars. I wrote it last year, came out last year, so you can get it wherever books are and libraries. It is about a rebel teen librarian and a music-loving alien on a road trip to possibly save humanity. If that sounds like something you'd like, go check it out. I also wrote The Kindred, and I think that's going to be available for pre-order soon. And The Kindred is, I've never pitched it, so please don't ask me, but it's really fun. I have not pitched it yet. Nobody has asked me, and I've just kind of gotten away with not having to say anything, but I have to think up a really good sentence. If anybody, yeah, I mean, you read it. You can read the synopsis on Goodreads, and if you want to come up with it, let me know. I'm not there yet. I'm way too stressed about pitching things. Like I never do well, so it's coming out. And if you like sci-fi and you like people who have connected minds and romance and ships crashing, you're gonna love that. It's gonna be great. I swear Edgard's gonna be like, Alechia, what? Get it together. I'm getting there. Edgard, believe me, I'm trying. It's so hard.
Honestly, you should just be able to say like, so if you want to know what my book is about, just click on this like Goodreads link and just like send it to people. Why did you pitch anything?
Look it up. I have it blocked on all of my computers, so I don't know what's happening on there. But if you look at it, you might know what it's about.
Amazing. Okay, and where can everybody find you on social media?
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at Alechia Writes, and that's ALECHIA Writes. And Instagram, it's at Alechia Dow, and that's it. I think I have a Facebook page, but I don't use it that often, so don't bother with that.
Yes. So I am Emery Lee, author of Meet Cute Diary, my YA rom-com about a trans boy, his romance blog, and the fake relationship that he stages in order to save the blog from an internet troll. I've gotten so good at that pitch. That
was a great pitch. You did it perfect.
I feel like I say it so often now. It's just like I'm like nailing it. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I am at Emery Lee Who. You can find me on Instagram. I am at Emery Lee Books. You can subscribe to my channel, which you are currently watching on, and because I will be doing another Meet Cute Monday next Monday with someone that I hate.
What?
If you're watching, if you've been keeping up with me, you know who that person is because there's only one person that I hate. Yes, thank you all for coming.
Now everybody's definitely going to show up to that. They're like, what? That's going to be awkward.
You gotta listen. I'm going to have my weapons ready, and it'll be a showdown. So definitely stop by next week. Thank you all for coming, everybody.
Thank you.